Okay, so in this video, we are back again with another episode of the Invest with Darren podcast. You guys seem to really enjoy the first episode, the bit of a pilot episode. So I decided to go ahead and try get another guest on. And we're very fortunate today to have Terry Gorry on here. So I'll just give Terry an opportunity to introduce himself and kind of tell you what he does and what he's about.
Yeah, my name is Terry Gorry. I'm a solicitor in Enfield and County Meath. My background is in sort of small business, entrepreneurship, property investment, that sort of thing. And I've been self-employed since I was 23 in 1986. I had quite a few businesses between retailing and property development, management or property management, property investing, and so on and so forth. But I'm a solicitor now. I'm a late convert to the legal game. And I qualified as a solicitor there about 10 years ago, actually, this year.
Okay.
So that's my background. So for 25 years, I've been small business. I'm still small business, but now I'm law rather than retail, rather than speculation and investment and development and so on, you know.
Okay, cool. So we'll let people calculate your age there because you gave them a bit of a math sum to do there. We'll let them figure out how much experience you have behind you. But yeah, the reason I got Terry on as well, and the reason I came across him, if you guys are watching from Ireland, I'm sure you've come across Terry. He's been doing YouTube for quite a while, and we'll get into that and kind of how he came about doing that. Because I don't think it's that commentary really. I haven't seen too many other people doing what you're doing, that have as much experience as you and are well able to go like in terms of the YouTube content and really bringing valuable content that people need. So maybe we'll just get into kind of why you started the YouTube kind of videos.
Well, I mean, originally I started a few years ago. Well, I don't know, even 10 years ago. Initially, when I was trying to build my business and get clients and so on, and the main reason actually was to get the search engine optimization and get good backlinks from YouTube, because obviously Google owns YouTube. But it developed and it built, and no sooner did I begin to put videos up about various topics like property and small business and road traffic and stuff, that people began to respond well and began to get a lot of queries. At the moment, I'd have quite a few clients who would have came to me through YouTube who would be based outside Ireland, for example, in Australia, America, United Kingdom, who want to buy property in Ireland, for example, and don't know how to go about it. And the very first thing they're going to do ordinarily would be to do some sort of a search either on Google or on YouTube. And either way, probably going to come across me. And if the content that I'm putting up there is of value, and that's absolutely key, well, then they're going to contact me and they're going to look for a quote and they're going to look for help. And that's what happens. So, earlier on, you were asking me where my clients come from, but to be honest with you, they're from all over the country and indeed outside the country, because people do make contact now in a sort of a virtual way,
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And when you started making the content, did you feel there was many other people, I suppose, probably a lot in America and the UK maybe, but was there many people kind of within the Irish space doing the same thing as you?
No, there wasn't. I mean, there still isn't. I mean, look, I'm a sole practitioner in Enfield County Meath, okay, but I'm the biggest legal YouTuber in Ireland. I mean, go figure. I mean, there's top 5, top 10 big swinging dick firms, quite frankly, in Dublin with YouTube channels. I mean, look at the Law Society YouTube channel and look at the Law Society subscriber base versus mine. There's absolutely no comparison. I can't understand, quite frankly, why others don't do it. I really don't care, because as far as I'm concerned, it's a land grab, So from my perspective, I'm just pumping out stuff, 2 videos a week. And if you go to YouTube or indeed Google, go to YouTube and do a search for Employment Law Ireland, Property Ireland, I can guarantee you I will be all over the front page like a cheap suit,
No, as you said, like, it's a bit crazy to think how are people not making the most of it, but it makes a lot of sense, and obviously it's worked out really well for you. You've gained a lot of subscribers there, and I think it comes down to as well, like as you said, there's a lot of kind of companies doing it, but sometimes you can't get as genuine as just reaching out to just an individual person, someone who has a lot of knowledge and is genuine.
A lot of them are absolutely and utterly clueless about how to do it. I mean, you need to deliver value, you need to be authentic, and if you have something to share, you should share it. But I see so many solicitors and indeed professionals making these kind of corporate-y, formal videos with, all sorts of shots, of the front of the building and so on. Like, nobody gives a shit about that. But the bottom line is, if you have a problem with a neighbor, or if you have a problem with a right of way and you're after buying a house, you don't want to know that these people have master's degrees from Trinity or have nice offices in Dane Street or whatever. They want a solution to their problem. You know what I mean?
They want someone who's done it and can give a good solution. Yeah.
If it's a couple that's come here from, say, outside Ireland, from Poland or from, Nigeria or wherever, and they're working here now, they got a job, they want to get their foot on the property ladder. They want assistance, they want help, they want to know what's the story, what's the steps in the process, etc. And if you can deliver that, you can deliver it with, quite frankly, with a mobile phone, So
yeah, and I think as well the fact that it's kind of yourself running the channel, that if someone drops you a comment, I'm sure you're much more likely to respond to it than will say some of these other things where someone else is managing the kind of social media and they don't even know the answer to the people who are actually managing it, and the chance of getting a response is just so low. So I think definitely there's a big appeal to doing it as an individual. But I think you kind of mentioned there people getting their foot on the property ladder, and one of the things I want to discuss is kind of some of your tips maybe for first time buyers in the current market, or maybe people buying. We'll go first time buyers first, and then we might go on to the investment property later, because I know they're a little bit different. But what would be kind of some of your tips?
First time buyers obviously are going to be constrained to a great extent with what they can afford. So all I would say is ensure that you do your due diligence in terms of the legal stuff. Obviously get the best finance deal you can in place, and then you must do your research. But at the moment it's a seller's market, there's no doubt about that. It's very, very strong, very frothy. I see that myself here with the files, and that's the nature of property. I've been buying in property and selling property since 1986, and I've seen various cycles, ups and downs and so on, and sometimes you to go with the flow. So whatever advice you might give, you want to try and make it evergreen. So I'd ensure that the planning is in order and that you're getting the best property you can in the best location you can, rather. And obviously the legals are vitally important, And I would recommend very strongly, though, to anybody to listen to the solicitor in terms of, if they've given them any warnings about, a particular problem, for example, as I say, a right of way or an easement, or perhaps a difficulty with a neighbour, they want to be careful about listening to the solicitor, not just ploughing ahead, because the day you buy is the day you sell, The vital thing, though, I would recommend, though, it would be in relation to second-hand property. Mm-hmm. Second-hand property, you're buying it in the condition that it's in. So it's a question of caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. You must or should get a structural survey done. And a structural survey may well cost you 250 to 450 quid. You might say, where the hell am I going to get that sort of money, etc., etc. But if you end up with an investment for 300 grand that you've splashed out, you've a mortgage millstone for 20, 25 years, and you discover that you've bought an absolute pig of a property for the sake of avoiding the 250 quid, that's lunacy,
Yeah, small amount of money for how much you'll end up saving.
Absolutely, yeah. And you need to keep spending it if you have to, And
then in terms of the investment properties as well, it's kind of the same thing. It's just a seller's market at the minute, really, isn't it? There's not a whole bunch of value out there.
Yeah, there isn't, no. But in terms of you don't have to confine your investment activities just to residential. You could actually look at commercial stroke residential, and that's how I started. And if you have a commercial stroke residential, you probably have greater flexibility for a bit of imagination. And the one thing that a property developer of any description or investor needs is a bit of imagination,
Yeah, I think that whole commercial space, I personally now, I haven't got into property investing yet, but it's something I hope to get into down the line. But the commercial space for me at the minute, I would think it would be a bit of a hot potato in terms of, obviously, with the offices, people don't need them as much to work from home, and that I think there's more kind of value, I guess, if you could find it, of course, but more value in owning a residential property and maybe looking for rental income there opposed to a commercial one. But of course I could be wrong there. You'd have a better idea than me. But
the residential market would be very, very strong generally in terms of demand. But if you get a small retail unit, for example, in a decent provincial town, strong town, and you've got somebody looking to set up a coffee shop or a nail bar or a beauty parlor or something, you will have a strong market for that, and you mightn't have quite the same competition in terms of going after the likes of that property. And if you get, that's how I started off, with a shop unit and a residential overhead, and between the jigs and the reels, it turned out really, really well in a very, very difficult time. But that involved a bit of hard graft and a bit of imagination and so on. But there's less people for that type of property. But there's probably a greater return as well because of that,
Yeah, that's actually good. I never really thought about that. It's quite common, I'd say, to have the kind of residential above the commercial property. So that could work out quite well.
There has been incentives, remember, over the last number of years to actually ensure that commercials which were abandoned have been redeveloped as residential. And there's actually planning breaks there, and there's regulations brought in by that Damien English, I think, when he was junior minister or whatever. And I know properties there, for example, that went tits up from a commercial perspective were unlet and unlettable, which one of my clients or a couple of my clients have bought and have converted them without any planning permission requirement to residential, you know.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting. Now I'll definitely make a note of that for.
Look at the likes of there's developments there in places like, for example, Chapel Lizard. I know one development there which was commercial, and you could actually convert it to residential without planning permission because there was an incentive there. It's like, regenerating the urban areas and so on, you know.
And as you said, when you were buying your first property as well, the times are tough. And I feel like when I'm talking to my parents, they say it was tough. And now for me, it's tough. So is it always just tough, basically? Is that the kind of outlook for everyone? Or
not always tough. I mean, sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's easy to get money. And like, during the Celtic Tiger years, it was really easy to get money, but we saw
too
what
easy
happened
nearly.
there. So the banks, absolutely, the banks were throwing money at you, but not only were they throwing it at you, they were throwing it at everybody else as well. And therefore, the market was being driven up and developed to the point where it was very, very frothy. And then there was a crash, So that's what I was saying, like, about the cyclical nature of the business. It is cyclical, and you do need to keep your wits about you and still, try and apply good sort of analysis, But like 12 years ago, during the Celtic Tiger thing, like, I was a victim of it myself. But back then, two of the wealthiest people in Ireland were Sean Quinn and Dr. AJF O'Reilly, and they both went bankrupt. You know, they both went bankrupt on the back of the property market. And quite frankly, if you're in a market and the tide goes out, you're screwed. You're drowned. And whether you're Dr. AJF or you're Sean Quinn, when the tide goes out, the tide goes out. So that's the nature of being in a cyclical market, and that can happen.
Yeah, no, definitely. So with that being said, I would say if someone's watching this now and they're thinking of maybe they want to go for a property in the next year or two, but they're like, I think the prices will come down. Like for me on that one, again, I don't have too much knowledge on it, but from what I see, like there's a clear supply and demand issue, or supply issue, should I say. There's no issue with demand. There's plenty of that, but I don't see that being fixed in the next 2-3 years. So I think if you're going to buy, probably if you bought today or as quick as you could, it'll probably be beneficial.
Exactly. My view would be that you'll never get the timing into a market or out of the market absolutely right. So the question is now a good time to buy? I think the question is, is a house or property, a residential property, right for me? And if it is, then I'd go ahead and buy. And I wouldn't be trying to forecast what the market's going to do, because over the long haul, as I say, it is cyclical. You'll do okay in the long term, but in the meantime, you get good enough tax breaks in this country when you buy a residential property and you live in it. And obviously you have a house that's probably appreciating in value and so on. So I wouldn't be hanging back trying to time the market exactly, because if you try to time the market, I think you're at nothing. It's just a question of throwing darts, And
especially if you're planning to hold the property for quite a while, like the chances are the market could be.
Yeah, you need somewhere to live, and you need shelter, and you're going to have a family, and you're going to have a job and so on and so forth. So, and like back in the day there, when the market crashed, the Celtic Tiger went tits up in, 10, 12 years ago. Economists then were telling us that, there'd be a soft landing, like soft landing my arse, So you needn't be depending on people to make predictions that are going to give you any degree of comfort, in my view, apart from just looking at the overall sort of demographics,
And then I'd just be curious to know your thoughts on the current lending limits. I suppose the 3.5 times or the 4.5 times if you manage to get an exemption. Do you think that's the kind of main blocker for people? Because I know people can be paying $1,800, $2,000 a month in rent, and if they got a mortgage, it would only be maybe like, we'll say $1,500 or 1,200 or something along that range. So the affordability is there, but in terms of the lending limits, they're just simply not getting that, which I know when you're just thinking at it doesn't make sense. And I know it's on the back of the Celtic Tiger and they have all these lending limits in place for that, but do you think they're too unfair currently on people? Because some of the prices just in Dublin are mad.
I've lived through a few booms and busts and so on, and I think we do need some sort of restrictions. We do need some sort of lending limits and so on, and I don't think they're too bad at the moment. Now I know, if you're on the wrong end of the stick and you're trying to get onto the ladder and you can't get enough money and so on, that's a problem. But I do think we need some sort of restrictions, and I've seen it the other way as well, when the banks were literally throwing money at you and they were giving you money for the bloody stamp duty. You weren't just talking about 100%; you were talking about like stamp duty money.
Yeah, so it's hard to find the kind of medium. We're maybe too restricted at the minute, but we have to be careful. Yeah.
When you are trying to strike a balance, there's going to be people on both sides of the equation who are disappointed and frustrated. But look at. That's it. Somebody has to take these decisions, and I think on balance, it's not too bad. And like I see plenty of young people buying houses there and so on. and they are getting onto the ladder. Now, I suppose there's others who are disappointed and not getting on, but that's we need something, I think, to save us from ourselves sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's a case of as well. It's kind of with anything in life that the people that are kind of content with the rules, are happy with the rules, they don't say anything, and then the people who aren't obviously shout the loudest. So it looks like it's all bad kind of thing in that regard. Now, obviously, there would be people out there struggling and genuinely just in a bad situation when they're trying to get on the property market, but it does seem to be that way. So it's hard to kind of get a true picture of what it's like.
It may well be, Darren, but I mean, allowing them to borrow more money may not be the solution. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's fair. I think that's good. So kind of what the outlook at the minute would be, kind of you can't time the market. So if you're looking to get a house and it's the right move for you now, go for it.
That would be my view. I wouldn't try and I wouldn't try and predict it. I've seen too many predictions going astray, and I wouldn't try and time it. The question, as I say, is if you're buying shares or buying property, you have to decide whether it's right for you and whether you have the correct mental sort of approach or psyche to deal with it. I mean, some people can't live with shares because they see the market correction there every few years and so on. But I mean, if you can't live with that, then you shouldn't be buying shares,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Something I want to touch on as well is it's kind of an American or even British concept sometimes. It's the BRRR method. So it's kind of, I suppose, where you buy something, you refurbish it, rent it out, and then refinance. And I was just wondering, is that common in Ireland? I haven't pretty much heard of anybody doing that in Ireland. Maybe I'm not in the right circles now, but like to actually get refinanced and pull your money out, how would that work in Ireland? Is it viable kind of?
You would, yeah. I mean, I would have been doing it myself over the years, and most property developers or small developers, small investors will be doing that. I mean, they're going to buy a property in a particular condition. They're going to try and add value. They're going to get it revalued. They're going to go back to the bank and say, look, I owe you 100 grand for this property. Now it's worth 150, 175, whatever. And I want to raise more money on foot of that. And this is security. And that was the crack, back in the Celtic Tiger years. I'm sure it's the same position. I mean, the bottom line is the bank wants to see that they are secure, their lending is secured on the property and that there is some asset there to back it, and B, they're going to get their money back. So like the fundamentals there are the same. You can dress it up or describe it any way you like, but I mean, I've been doing that for years, when I was active in the property market.
Okay, so it is possible. I haven't heard too many kind of, I suppose it comes back to, as you're saying, there's just not that many Irish creators out there, especially ones that have the experience that are kind of talking about this. We see so much American content thrown in our faces whenever we go on this, and oftentimes it's just not kind of relatable at all because things obviously work very different over there. But no, that's good to know that the refinancing is viable.
Just on that point, I mean, I would say that in terms of investment or property generally, you do need the capital, but you need imagination as well,
Yeah.
And a few years ago, about 10 years ago, I bought a pub, for example, in a place in Cavan. And ultimately then I closed the pub down, or it didn't trade. But I sold the building itself to a local pharmacy, and I took the license out and sold it to Aldi or Lidl in Waterford,
Okay, well.
So again, this was a pub, for example, in a town in which there was, I think, 22 to 25 pubs, small rural Ireland, would never trade again. And remember, the whole drink driving push in this country has changed that whole situation. Villages and towns that would have supported 10, 15, 20 pubs years ago might support 2 or 3 now. So, but the likes of that situation would have meant that you look at the thing, you take the license out of it, and remember, you can sell the license to Lidl or Aldi or Tesco for an off license in wherever. And again, with a bit of imagination, you have a decent building then as well, decent location. You have a license to sell too, so you can sort of speculate and buy and refurbish, but you do need a bit of imagination if you're going to get into property, and you can describe it any way you like, but I mean, the bottom line is you add value and you sell it on or refinance,
Yeah, and I think that's maybe where someone like yourself could come in if anyone is thinking about that. Obviously, as we've talked about, someone who has expertise, that's what people are looking for, not these kind of, I suppose, spruced up videos, someone who's really getting down to the knowledge of things. So it was a good time to say, if any of you guys are interested in anything like that, make sure you check out Terry's channel there. I'll leave it linked down in the description below, but we'll touch on that again in a bit. But I think kind of one of the topics to finish up for now, and I have a feeling that this video will have a lot of people commenting, Terry, so I might have to get you back on at some stage. But the kind of last question that I have for now is basically around just kind of how side hustles should be structured, because I feel like a lot of people are starting up side hustles, whether it be just a small little business where they're, I know one of my girlfriend's friends is like printing off labels and making like custom bottles. So just small side business like that, or even something like YouTube where you start to earn a bit of an income, maybe through sponsorships or through ad revenue. So at what stage should someone maybe look to say, like they work their current job as well, like as just a normal PAYE worker. But what stage should they say, could I set up a legal entity kind of around my side hustle, or is it just not worth it?
There's a question that I'm asked regularly, and my view all the time is when people come to me, they're starting a business and they're wondering what sort of structure to put in place. My view would be like to get punters first, get clients first, develop your business, develop your revenue. And once you have revenue coming in, once you have sales, then you can worry about the structure. But until you get punters, there's no point setting up a limited company or whatever, because there is cost involved in that. You do have to make annual returns. And if you want to delist it or wind it up, etc., there's a cost involved with that as well. So my view would be to start off as a sole trader, keep an eye on your tax situation, speak to an accountant who can ensure that you're, absolutely compliant with revenue and so on. And then as your business grows, then worry about structure. But I wouldn't be too concerned about structure first. I'd see it as getting the cart before the horse. My view would be get clients, get sales, get punters, The bottom line is you can go limit a company and then you go to borrow money from the bank, and the bank is going to want a personal guarantee from you anyway. So the only people that you're going to really shaft if you have a limited company is your ordinary creditors, And
I think a lot of people think like it's 12.5% on your profits, but then you have to realize that when you actually want to pay yourself, then you're going to have to just pay your income tax on that anyway, or if you take it out in dividend form. So
out can be getting money out can be messy, and there is taxes to account for and so on and so forth. So it's not that straightforward. But I would speak to an accountant certainly. But I mean, the very first thing you'd want to be doing is growing your business or developing your business and getting clients.
Yeah, and then it'll be a good problem to worry about then. But yeah, that's perfect. Okay, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the podcast. Thanks to Terry Gorry for jumping in on this one. He has a lot of knowledge there. So if you have any questions for him, go ahead and drop them in the comment section below, and we may get him back on for another episode. As well as that, as I mentioned, go ahead and check out Terry's channel if you haven't already, and make sure you do subscribe over there and let him know that I sent you over. If you have any more suggestions for guests you'd like me to get on the Invest with Darren podcast, go ahead and drop them in the comment section below as well. And if you did enjoy this, make sure you do drop a like and subscribe as well. Thanks for watching, guys.